This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Hope you're enjoying your summer. John Matarazzo is a household name in Millburn and Short Hills, New Jersey. In 1963, he opened a fashion boutique with two friends that became the fashion epicenter for ladies who lunched, men who wanted to dress for success, and the stars of the nearby Paper Mill Playhouse. Matarazzo was ahead of his time and shares more than 50 years of dressing, designing, and styling in his book entitled Beyond the Fitting Room.
I wrote about certain years, the 60s, 70s, 80s, into the early 90s, and told a real story about what happened in that period of time. And my shop was very unusual. I kept people entertained over the years. I used to do a lot of fashion shows, and I was the first out in this area to bring in Black American models. We had a tea room in 1963. We did things that were a little different for that period. We did a lot of informal modeling, a lot of major fashion shows in New Jersey and New York. Our clothes were very unique. I traveled all over at that time. I went to Europe, California, and tried to have the things that were a little different so customers wouldn't see themselves coming and going, because we were a specialty store. So many designers came up with certain things, like Jacqueline Kennedy when she wore the pillbox, and then millinery took off. And, we were in different businesses. We had our own shoe department, and beauty was a very big part of my business. I had 70 people working in the beauty salon.
You got your hair done, you got your face done, bought a new pair of shoes.
I kept the customers entertained. An Italian night, for instance, with Italian fashions, where I brought in designers from Italy. And I'll tell you also what influenced me in the beginning. One day we had this couple come in to shop, and he was with Time and Life in New York. And they had a place in Palm Beach and a place up in the Short Hills area. And they said, "Do you see what I see?" And I said, "What?" They said, "Look outside." Even though we had valet parking, there were 7 chauffeur-driven limousines waiting to get in. And he at that time said to me, and this was in the beginning, in maybe 1970, "You should write a book sometime, because I've traveled all over the country and I've never seen anything like that. 7 chauffeur-driven limousines."
Wow.
So we were very well known for fashion, and the store itself. It kept growing and growing.
So you documented your great success story.
It was very successful. I think that's another reason why I wanted to write the book, because I felt that there was so many wonderful people working, almost devoting themselves to the business, which you don't find today. I mean, I did a lot of work for many movie stars. I had the Paper Mill Playhouse out here. And through them, I connected sort of with them and doing a lot of costumes. And many stars became customers and friends. Ann Miller was a very dear friend. It goes on the list.
Right. What is it that you want people to get from your book?
I want them to understand a little bit about what happened in fashion and designers during that period of time, what they did, and then how the world changed. Styles changed.
Are you doing a book signing at the Paper Mill Playhouse?
I probably am. Yes, they asked for a book to read.
Oh, good.
I have several signings, and I'm also going to be on television, hometown TV.
That'll be so fun.
I just got a request to do 4 signings in Florida, which I was surprised.
In Florida, because that's where a lot of your clientele live now?
Oh, a lot of my clientele's down there. It's very funny that before I went to Page, 2 or 3 other companies I had interviews with, independently of each other, they all felt that it could become a musical. It had the potential.
Well, John, you never know. It's out there now. We'll see what happens. Tony Marlt is recruiting people for a private peer advisory board for executives, and that's just his latest venture. After 25 years in the corporate world, 10 years in the military, he's determined to help people become leaders who earn respect because they give respect. The name of his book, The Leadership Quotient.
And essentially, you bring people together from diverse industries so that it's non-compete, and you bring them together usually once a month so they get out of the office, because most people, it's the lonely at the top syndrome, right? So you bring them together and they can process issues with their fellow CEOs.
Really nice to know that they care. You get a feeling that people in that position that have reached that level don't want
Yep.
to ever look vulnerable. Can you see Jeff Bezos saying, I need help, I'm lonely?
I agree, and I think there's some people that you have to screen out because their egos, their personality, whatever it is, won't allow them to be vulnerable, and you have to be. And so that's part of the coaching and facilitation I do. So that's why it's not just me just going out and finding whoever I want. It's a selection process. Everything in my book is all about the kinds of things that we're doing in terms of teaching people leadership and being vulnerable. Ideally, I want to get 12 to 16 members for my first group. My plan is to just give them a copy of that book because my book has 35 plus years of experience, both military and also in the corporate world for Hallmark cards. And there are quotes throughout the book, and those are really Tonyisms, I call them, but they're quotes that I wrote to myself when I found myself either doing something really well as a leader or where I tripped over my toes or I saw someone else do really well or stumble themselves. So by the time I left Hallmark, I had assembled probably about 100 quotes. And so I took the best of those, and that's really how I fleshed out my book. And I make a big distinction between managers and leaders in the book. The leadership part is bringing other people along and making them shine. And to do that, that means you have to focus on people, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're not willing to do that, then in my book, I call it the aspirational great leader. Then you might be an average or a good leader, but you're not going to be great unless you look at the people axis as well as getting stuff done. So I believe everyone's a leader, period, the end. I mean, every individual in the company is a leader. And if everyone is a leader, then they're going to do their best from an emotional standpoint, from an intellectual standpoint, and they're going to train other people around them. So that's a very different going in focus than traditional management, which is I'm the boss, you're the follower, so follow me.
Right.
The other quote that I think is very foundational, it's in order to gain control or power, you have to give it up. And that's that vulnerability that you were talking about earlier. You have to say, you know what? I am going to trust those below me, and they are going to trust those below them to get the job done. And sometimes that means I may have to take a hit because Johnny or Susie made a mistake, right? But did they learn from it, which I call failing forward? That's how you develop a learning organization, because if everyone is not afraid that they're going to lose their job every 2 minutes, then the whole organization just gets more and more powerful. And in the Navy, we called it being a force multiplier.
All right, Tony. Well, thanks for trying to make corporate America a better place to work. Amanda Bibbo is a stay-at-home mom in the Cleveland area, taking her first step toward being a mindfulness leader, speaker, and educator with her first book entitled Why Am I Here? An Oak Tree Finds Her Purpose.
About 8 years ago, I was in a meditation and I had this thought, and it's kind of never left me, which was I have to just inspire everybody and educate them on meditation and mindfulness and how to self-love and how to listen within. And it's always been a part of me. I've never lost that. And so it's kind of just my quest to keep moving forward in any positive direction. You know, every chance I get, I have 2 young kids right now, but all the books that I read are kind of either like a self-help or new age or something positive. Yeah, so I guess I do. I study. I've been to a lot of classes. I took an inner wisdom practitioner course.
So that's what you
And
do when you're not writing. That's your thing. That's what you
that's my
do.
thing. Yes,
Yeah.
that is my thing. So my book is about a young oak tree. Her name is Amberella. It's from the time she is a little sprout, and it takes you on her journey growing throughout the seasons. And she is kind of watching everything around her. She's watching the apple trees grow apples, and she's so curious, why are they growing apple trees? What is my purpose? Why am I here? If acorns don't produce acorns until they're a little bit more mature. So she's kind of just like confused about why she's here on earth. And her mother oak is just kind of reminds her to just be patient. Your time will come. And she is kind of missing all of these beautiful things that she's doing every day by creating shade for the creatures below, providing shelter, and she's so looking at the future that she's not even realizing what she's doing every single day. And so that was why I wrote the book, that we are doing all of these amazing things now. So let's pay attention now. And this will take you to your bigger purpose in the end. And she did just that.
Are you getting a chance to share this?
I am, yeah. I've been going on book tours around the area. So I just started that a few months ago, and it's been amazing. I've joined a women's group and trying to go to libraries and speak to all types of people, children and adults, and it's been wonderful. If you want the world to know your message, you have to act, and you have to share, and you have to talk about it, and you have to have passion behind you, and that will keep you moving and motivated. And once you're in conversation, say at a book signing, so many people give you great feedback, and it just kind of keeps going from there. So I just been, it's just kind of been my fuel, because everybody has been so receptive and positive, and it's been
Well,
wonderful.
you got the right idea, Amanda. You really do. And you've just given our authors some really good things to think about. So thank you for that. Susanna Johnson is a nutritionist at 2 recovery centers in Southern California and never thought she'd write a children's book until her daughter came home with a great idea. She decided to use it as a teaching moment. The name of her book, Lunch Lady Lynne and the Golden Spatula.
She came home singing this cute little song about the lunch lady at her school. And I said, oh my God, that would make a great children's book. And I had her sit down and draw what the book was about. And I kind of made up the little story, just written on like printer paper. And she loves to draw. So she created all these illustrations, and we made this cute little story. And I said, well, I think we should get it published. And it was really an exercise in showing my daughter that she can do anything that she feels like she wants to do. It just takes action and effort. It's like 50% about that and 50% about celebrating the everyday people in our lives. The lunch lady at our school is somebody who feeds and interfaces with hundreds of children every single day. And she is not really seen by parents, and she's not really acknowledged in any way. And so when I was able to walk up to Lunch Lady Lynne at our elementary school, and when I was able to hand her this little hardcover children's book that was based on her, the look on her face was worth the entire project. I mean, she felt so seen, and she felt so special, and she felt like her 25 years of service to these children was like somebody saw her, and that was the most amazing thing. So really, it was not about me writing a book at all, but about celebrating a member of the community.
That's such a great message for your daughter.
I mean, it's really, really special. So a little girl who's having her first day at a new school, and she's kind of nervous, and she makes a friend, and she is very intrigued by this mysterious lunch lady who rides a motorcycle and has tattoos and drives a pickup truck and, wears a motorcycle helmet and kind of disappears into the cafeteria. And so she decides that she's not going to bring her lunch from home, and that she's going to go to the cafeteria so she can meet this mysterious lunch lady. And then there's an incident where her friend starts choking on a meatball, and lunch lady Lynne comes in and saves the day, and everyone talks about how much they love lunch lady Lynne, and that's really it. Next on my list of things to do is to find a giant spatula and spray paint it gold and hang it and give it to lunch lady Lynne, because that's what happens in the story.
That is such a great idea, Susanna. What a great book. What a great way to teach your daughter such an important lesson. All right, we got to take a quick break, but we're coming right back, so don't you go anywhere. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books, and unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them, and they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Eric Dilworth is a father of 3 daughters, works in physical therapy, and finds time to write early in the morning, all thanks to his mom, who taught him all there is to know about using the English language. But it wasn't until she died that he decided to get to work and publish his first book. It's entitled Blank Sheet. Now, you talk about a lot of people turning up dead.
So this whole book started on the basis of what happened in chapter 1, which is basically 2 guys are in the car talking about boxing. And that sport rebuttal just kind of grew from, where are they? Okay, the car's moving. What time of day is it? Okay, when they get to their destination, what happens then? And it kind of just grew. I'm what they call a discovery writer, so I just continue to go with it. I had no real idea of the plot of what I was going to do until I just started writing, and it developed from there.
So what happens?
There's these series of deaths that occur. Everybody's watching them. It's not like it's just a person who's dead and everybody has to come and investigate it. People are witnessing what happened. They witnessed the crime. And so it becomes a federal matter. These 2 federal agents who are on the case, they're diametrically opposed in age and in viewpoints and things of that nature. The only evidence there, which links that case and various other cases that happen similar to it, this evidence is linked to something that connects the 2 agents in their past that they didn't know was connected to them, despite the fact that they don't get along at all. These 2 guys who are in the car talking boxing, they get into a deathmatch fist fight. And so the only evidence is this small blank sheet of paper. And so when they go and check the car, that's where they find is that paper. They go and check their residence. They find nothing in the homes when they live about 200 or so miles from each other, no connections that they know each other at all. But the only thing in their homes is that same blank sheet of paper. The place is spotless, like they never lived there, except a blank sheet of paper. And the same thing occurs throughout with a coffee shop with 3 women and a couple other ones, the exact same MO. The people who know these people, neighbors and whatnot, they're like, yeah, we just saw them yesterday. I just talked to them 2 days ago. And then so people go into their homes and see it was completely empty, spotless. Not a mark on the ground, a nail on the wall. It's just that small blank sheet of paper, the exact same that was in the car from the beginning. They're trying to link the connection between the people they see there and what these blank sheets signify.
You're in physical therapy. Is there a copy of your book in the office?
Yeah, there's a lot of them circling around the office and to various patients, absolutely. I don't recall what number, but a very high volume of patients who have bought it, and I've signed it for them. One in particular is he's the producer of the movie Equalizer with Denzel Washington.
And?
Well, he's got a hold of it. He read it and loved it, and he's trying to connect me with some of his people to see if it can turn into episodic. The whole idea of this was a movie, but I don't know how to write a script. So I said, I'm going to write it in book form, and I'll just conquer both sides. I'll just have them write. People in the book world love it, and people who love it in film, it can be like that. One of the best compliments I received is that someone told me it was like reading a movie on print. and that was just humbling for me.
So are you ready to give up the day job or what?
Not quite, not quite.
All right, moving on. George Rogers taught drafting and engineering at a local college in Danville, Virginia for over 40 years, and he loves to tell stories. So much so his friends told him, you got to write a book. So he did. It's called Thumb. So what's with the thumb, George?
The thumb is the word that I chose because I started hitchhiking when I was 14. And it really opened up a whole lot of avenues in my life, and it introduced me to every kind of person on the planet. That's the only way I could get anywhere. And I hitchhiked until I started teaching, really, the service and through college. And I did a lot of hitchhiking while I was in college. I had an arrangement with NASA, and I was working with NASA every 3 months. I would change my location from one end of Virginia at Virginia Tech to NASA. And then at the end of 3 months, I'd have to go back. And I just had a weekend to do it in. And I hitchhiked every week. I used my whole life as a thread for the story, but then I injected people all along the way that I had met and stories about them and things that had happened that I found pretty interesting.
So give me a taste of what I'm going to find in your book.
Well, I could meet someone on the road and then find out later that I was in the same world with that same person again, and then found out again that we'd met again. Things like that were just interesting. But there are also personal stories about people galore. I have one story in there about a couple across the street. Some students came to visit me one night, and they don't pull their blinds and they don't pull their windows shut. And my students were privy to their domestic problem, and the problem was pretty severe. As a matter of fact, we all thought that she was going to get killed that night, but he stood there with his shotgun pointing at her in the bed, and she said, I'm sorry, but you don't scare me in the slightest because I know you don't have the balls to pull that trigger. And he said, one day you're going to push me too far, that kind of thing. But that's just one kind of a story.
All right.
There were just a jillion stories like that. I was at a reform school in South Carolina working for 7 summers, and lots of stories came from there because it was a beautiful, wonderful place. And we have great reunions now. And, well, for instance, one of the girls at the last reunion, she's about 80 years old, said, George, were you the guy that called me that night when I fell off that truck and saved my life and held me under the truck until they stopped? And I said, yes. And she said, George, did I ever properly repay you? And I said, no, I'll just have to take a rain check.
You're a natural to go out and talk about your book and do book signings?
Well, I've done book signings at the school in South Carolina, and I've done book signings locally here. I've got a lot of fantastic reviews from the people who have read the book, and I haven't really gone out beyond my routine world.
It doesn't sound like you've had to.
No, I didn't have to.
Finally, John Lee Jacob is retired from the Los Angeles Correction Department, and now he can focus on his writing. He's got a very creative way of going about building a story. Tell us about your book, Outside Town.
I just came up with this idea of about a western town, and I came up with the title first, and that kind of inspired me to fantasize about what the town would be. The title of the book is Outside Town, and I made a western town with no walls and no windows and no doors, and just kind of a framework. Took western plot lines and developed a storyline out of that. It's like 7 little stories using different areas of the town as the backdrop. I have a school story. I have a story of a library.
Like each chapter is a story about another part of this town.
Yes.
And they're not all necessarily tied together.
No. The library story is the first library in town, and a little girl learns how to find books, to learn how to read, and then it flashes back and forth as a little girl and then as an older woman talking about how she found her love of books through this first library in town.
Nice.
The other story, which actually is the first story that kind of introduces the book, I call it Back Outside Town. The outside town was actually used as a backdrop for Western movies that were done years and years ago. So the actors of that time come back and bemoan the fact that the town backdrop is being destroyed because it hasn't been used for years. And the wrecking crew comes and they fall in love with the town, and you see the ghosts of the former actors come, and they somehow infuse in the wreckers into what's saving the town. And then at the end, you see the town being revitalized and used for a new Western that's being filmed at the time.
Okay, and that's the very first story in the book, and then from there, we learn about various areas of town.
Various other parts of the town. Yeah, I used the outside town as the title, kind of like the umbrella, and then just different areas of the town to explain the town.
All right, John Lee, this is proof there's more than one way to put a story together, and I say go with whatever works for you. That is a wrap for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club, another great group of authors, and I have to say, we got some really good ideas about how to get your book out to the world. Page can only do so much. In the end, your book is your baby, and no one is going to sell it better. All right, if you missed anything, you know where to go. To the podcast. Download as many episodes as you want at 710WOR.com. In the meantime, get writing. You hear me? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.